let's talk about the last wrap-up of 2021 December, where I was all over the place. If you watch my Friday reads, some weeks I was a reading machine, some weeks I'm like, I watched TV and movies and knitted a sweater. But somehow I still read 10 things, which is pretty average for me. It was around 3,400 physically read pages somehow, and I listened to 2 audiobooks. So a standard month that didn't feel standard at the time, with a lot of great books. Like, I know there are some books I didn't love as much as others, but all I remember are like the hits because they were great. So if you're new to my wrap-ups, I like to combine books into groups. It can be on themes or genre or whatever I want, and I like doing it that way. I've in the past have tried to do wrap-ups the traditional order I read it or ratings, and this is more fun for me. So the first category, I don't really know what's going to be written on the screen, but it's basically books that combine science and religion in ways that I found fascinating. One was a nonfiction, and one was more of a literary contemporary fiction. The first one I'll talk about is the nonfiction, which is Braiding Sweetgrass. This is a book that I have had on my personal Goodreads want to read list 5 years. My cousin, who's really into conservation and the environment, had read it and put it on my radar, and I'm not as good at getting to my nonfiction TBR as I would like to be, but I never took it off. And then this year, for Jess Owen's Nonfiction Book Club, it was time to read it, and I was excited, I was pumped, I had no idea what I was in for. Like, this is not a traditional nonfiction, and I really appreciate it for that. I'm going to link the discussion down below, because we had some amazing voices that were chiming in. Like, I loved what I learned listening during that discussion. But for me, I really appreciated that this is a nonfiction that is a blend of science, of memoir, philosophy, religion. It's a book that wants to state, here is a problem, and here is my cultural dissonance, and it doesn't make you feel hopeless. Like, there's a lot of, at least for me, here are things that you can tangibly do as an individual to not give up, to have hope, because it's definitely a story that it's not a story. It's definitely a nonfiction that touches on climate change and our relationship with the earth and how it's not sustainable. And looking at it through the lens of her culture and everything like that, because she is a botanist and she's also indigenous. I really liked this nonfiction. I do think you have to go into it with a very open mind, especially if you are, like me, a Western scientist. There were definitely things that I was just like, okay, I need to reframe how my brain typically thinks about things. But it was a really enriching experience for me. And I also, there are parts where I hear what she had to go through as a scientist. I'm just like, oh, I sometimes hate the old blood in the science community, because they forget their roots and they look down at people who are doing things that are intuitive and actually based in science, but since it's not based on their rigorous form of science, it's just that there was a tiny bit of my internal rage there, hearing some of those actual memoir stories. So it's a fascinating read. I actually got myself a physical copy that I'm definitely going to be pulling out and reading some segments of here and there throughout the years, because it's a reflective piece of nonfiction that I find personally very enriching. And then the next one that I was hoping to hit a bit harder for me, and it just didn't quite get there, and that was Transcendent Kingdom. This is like I said, a literary contemporary fiction about this young woman who is a scientist, like at the story's main timeline, getting her PhD. Has lost a family to drug addiction. Her mom has extreme depression and needs to be taken care of. That's the present timeline, and then we go into the past to learn about what's happened to this family. And she's also first-generation American. Her family is from Ghana. And so there's also discussion there about the racism she experienced in the South, but also her ties to religion and what it was like to be raised very religious and then feel abandoned by her God, and then really dive into science and why she dived into science in the field she did. And there's a lot that I like conceptually, but the execution left me wanting. It's a very short story, and there was a lot of it where I wouldn't have minded deeper dives. Like, and I think part of it is that the story that the author wanted to tell just wasn't the story I wanted to read, and that's okay. But we're really watching this reflective process of this young woman, and I wanted to see what happened after the reflection, which maybe would have added another 100 pages, but then the book still would have only been like 400 pages, and I would have read it because I really liked the writing style. I thought it was very digestible. I loved the research this author did into the science. chef's kiss. I knew exactly what was happening, and I guess I don't know, as someone who's not in science, how digestible those portions were, but I can tell you it was legit. When that person said in her acknowledgments, I talked to my friend to talk about their research and use that here. Yes, you did, and you did a fantastic job of making sure that you weren't making things up. Like, I have read science fiction that uses research in PhDs, and I was just like, that's not how that works, but okay. And I just loved the simplicity of how well portrayed I thought it was. So I liked a lot of it, hence the 4 stars, but I wanted a bit more, especially since I should relate to this material a lot more because of my own life experiences. Like, a lot of our life is very parallel, minus the extreme religion background. Like, I was raised as a Unitarian Universalist, so not extremely religious. But I mean, I have had a falling out with God because of addiction in my family, and I threw myself into my work, and I'm getting a PhD. Like, there's a lot that I'm like, I should connect more to this person. And I think that's partially the writing was purposefully meant to not go as deep, and I just wanted it to. So that's that category. Really didn't expect that to happen when I put this list together. And the next section is books that just made me feel good. Like, this is just, here's some serotonin. Like, I'm not talking about all-time favorites or anything. I'm just talking about I had a warm feeling in my heart while I was reading these. The first one I do have a standalone review for, A Man and His Cat. And in that video, I talk about adopting my cats and show you some videos of my 2 fuzzes. This is a manga, the first volume, of a cat who has not been adopted for like a year, 2 years at this pet store, who is adopted by a man who has gone through extreme loss. So both of these characters are so fragile, and they find love and hope in each other. And it's also just your classic, like, when you read anything about cats, you're just like, yeah, that's how cats are. They're just so silly. And I love cats. I loved the story. It made me feel warm inside. So that is a manga that I think will have at least 5 volumes, and I might try to read more of it, but it was just warm hug of a book. Another one I picked up purely for the feels, and that's Amor. Actually, this is a new romance holiday collection. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, but this has a lot of Latinx authors who are writing stories based off the stories in the movie Love Actually, which is a movie I grew up watching, and it has faults, but my family and I, we have a lot of nostalgia. We really like it, and I really had fun with this collection. It showed me some romance authors that I might want to check out because I liked what they did with certain tropes and angles. I liked how they reimagined some stories and fixed some problems in other ones. I was having a great time. It was perfect to read leading up to Christmas because that's why I read it, because it's a holiday romance collection. So just warm, fuzzy feelings. I'm glad I picked it up on a whim and I read it. And the last one's a reread called Redemption in Indigo by Karen Lord. I love this book. It's one of my favorites, and part of it is because it makes me feel good. I laugh. I feel like it's a really lovely story. It's a story about stories and the power of them. And like, I don't know, I have a spoiler chat that I have for my patrons, and like while filming that, I'm just like, man, I really love every decision in this book. This book is so good. And I understand why like it doesn't connect with everyone, but I'm just someone who grew up with this whole like, you tell a story to children and there are these morals, and like, I don't know, it reminds me of the stories in musicals specifically. Like, a musical became a book, and for me it was Redemption in Indigo. And in some ways that means it has moments that I normally don't like in other books, but it works really well here. Like, it feels like a stage production that knows I am watching it, and I like that. Okay? So, I mean, way back in my YouTube data, I compared this to a musical I love called Once on This Island. And I still hold to that. Like, Once on This Island is this story that they're telling children about the gods and how they interfered in this tragic love story. You know, so grand, and like those elements are on this page. So it brings my heart joy, and I read it on my birthday, so extra joy. I do have a spoiler-free vlog where I talk about that book. So the next section will be dark, twisted fantasy. Yeah, so another one in that vlog I just mentioned, Temper by Nicky Drayden. I have finally finished all of the novels that exist for Nicky Drayden. I'm so pumped for the next one. Whenever that will be, I think their most recent release was a 2021 that I've already read, so I probably have time. But Temper, ooh, I accidentally read a winter fantasy, and I didn't know it was a winter fantasy. This takes place close to their winter solstice in an alternative history future South Africa, where people are born with a twin. You have a twin, and between you and that twin, your vices and virtues are split. There are like 7. And the idea is that there is a greater twin or a lesser twin, and the whole society revolves around that, and we follow one of the twins in a twin pair. And then it gets dark, and then it changes genres like so many times. Like, not really, like, I do think it's more horror fantasy, like it's really dark and creepy and unsettling, and like you feel like the whole it's winter, so the creepy things come out at night. And it's one of those books that I couldn't put down because that's what happens to me with Nicky Drayden. I did read it in a day. It's not perfect. I have some issues with some of the ending. I kind of wish that it was fleshed out to a series, or that it was a little longer to really get that last part to like really hit. But I really liked it. It was a book where I couldn't predict what was happening, and it is a book, though, that if you do not like dark, unsettling things, I wouldn't pick it up, because graphically there are some really dark things, but also just like morally some like icky, uncomfy things. You're just like, what is happening? But that's also part of exploring some of the themes. I don't want to say too much more because, like I said, it's a book that I don't think knowing the twist ruins it, but there are a couple things that I just was like, well, I guess we're telling this story now. Tell me more. I had a lot of fun. The vlog really sees me in real time descending into madness. So that's the first one. And then the next one is The Poison Song, the last book in the Winnowing Flame series. What a wonderful, wonderful trilogy. Like, if you like action movies, like action Marvel MCU movies, like you like heroes that save the day and everything's going poorly, and you like good banter and chemistry between characters, but you want like a book version that's a little bit more thought out, you know, a little bit longer than your 2.5-hour movie, like you have some time, Winnowing Flame trilogy. I'm going to make a review for it eventually when I got the spoons, but this one, the reason why it's in this dark, unsettling fantasy area is because it's really gross. Like, some of the imagery is just, it's really gross. Your antagonistic force is literally called these, like, worm people that you learn about in the first book. There's another name for it that it's a fantasy world with an apostrophe that I'm refusing to try and pronounce. But these things are, like, straight from, like, a sci-fi horror movie. Like, the way things are described and the things that happen, definitely some gross, gooey body horror things, and then just some of the actions that our characters do, and like, it's a story about conflict and the need to fight and war, and it does have stakes, it does have consequences, and sometimes those things are hard to read and it's pretty dark, but it also is like dark in the sense that I would say that like Endgame is dark in Avenger, where it's like at times you do feel the hopelessness in that movie, but also it's a Marvel movie, so you're still laughing and you're still like having fun. Like, I think it's a very entertaining series. Like, I read it because I am entertained, because I'm on the edge of my seat, because I have fun with these characters. And so on one side, when it's unsettling, it's unsettling. But on the other, when it's just colorful and vibrant and you're seeing these grand places, like there's a city with this huge tree in the center of it, I'm like, I can see this. This is so vibrant, and I am bad at that. So for me, it was a really well visualized world, and the action scenes just like came off the page. I could see the moves people were doing. I really liked the writing. I really like this as just a fun, entertaining, action-packed, weird, dark fantasy series. So that was a great conclusion. Probably not my favorite. Like, I think I like the second book the best. I think the second and first book are like same-ish level, and this one's like a hair below it, but 5-star series. Super fun. The last section we'll get into are just continuation of fantasy series, because apparently I was just really good at doing that this month. We'll start with my least favorite, and I think work my way up. And that was The Path of Daggers, Wheel of Time. It's the 8th book. It's like, for sure, a book in the slog. No one disagrees that this isn't a sloggy book. Important things happen. This book's theme was women have different hierarchies, but they all bicker. Like, it was really just so basic. It's fine. I had no real issues with it. I was just bored. Like, I don't know. But there were some things that I'm like, oh, this will be exciting to see on screen if they put this scene in the show. Like, there were definitely really epic moments. But on a whole, I was also just like reading it, and I was like, you know, there were these things we cared about like 3 books ago, and I haven't heard about them in 3 books. Are they still relevant? Like, we haven't talked about some things in a long time. So there was part of me just being like, where are we going? That's how I feel a lot. So I don't think it was worse for me than, say, The Great Hunt, because I don't really love The Great Hunt. But it's definitely not as good for me as, say, A Crown of Swords, which I really liked, because I have weird Wheel of Time opinions. Next up, though, okay, these two are like neck and neck, but I'm going to say The Liar's Knot is up next. What a fantastic sequel. So great. Okay, so this is a sequel to The Mask of Mirrors. We all know I love The Mask of Mirrors. Angela, what else can you say? I can say that having two authors write a very intricate political and big scope magic plot is great, because they both have to be convinced that this plot's working. And it really doesn't have plot holes that I could notice. I was really getting good payoff for the setup. I will say the beginning is slow, a little slower than I like, but once it picked up, it was fantastic. And even when it was slow, I was seeing character interactions I loved. I mean, this is a book where the characters are their characters. I have actors for them in my mind, like not real life actors, but I'm like, this is what Vargo is, this is what Ren is, this is what Gray is, this is how Tess is. You know, like they are distinct voices. I rarely get confused about who is on page if I'm not, sometimes you're not given like someone's name right away. I always know who's on page. So I love the characters. I was having so much fun with how they were figuring out the plot and making things happen. And I really like the ending and how it's definitely a second book and there are things we have to handle in the third book. But I'm also not like, oh no, I have to wait a year for the third book. Like, I'm okay. It's like how I feel most of the time after like a Stormlight Archive book where I'm like, oh, we have things that we need to handle, but I'll be okay because currently the arc that we set up was relatively resolved, and I appreciate that in second books. I feel like second books don't always handle that very well. I do think this might end up being my least favorite in the series, but kind of like with The Poison Song, it's like still a 5-star read. The Mask of Mirror introduces my characters and the world, and there was also just like a tiny bit less dancing, although there was one dance scene that I was like, yes. In the last book, it's just perfection was Jade Legacy by Fonda. Guys, I still don't know how to talk about this book. It's the last book in the Greenbone saga. Again, I just want to remind you all that I don't love Jade War that much. I like it a lot. I think it's very important, and I actually like it more now, knowing the whole arc. But in terms of reading it twice, it was never my favorite in the series, and I don't think it ever will be. But Jade Legacy was so perfect from the beginning to the end. I read like 250 pages of it in one day and had a blast, but also was just like, I was having those feelings of like, oh, it's ending. Like, it's ending. What am I going to do? And it was fantastic, really well crafted story, really ambitious. Like, I knew what she was going to do with this book, and I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work for me. And it did, and I'm just so happy about it. So, great ending to that trilogy. I finished 2 trilogies that were really solid this month. Like, it was fantastic. So that was my reading month. I read a lot of things, or at least a lot of pages. Let me know, how did you end your year? Was it a pretty good reading month? Did you end up just watching more TV, watching some movies? Like, I mean, I watched a lot of great things that I'll talk about in a different video in the future. If you want to leave an emoji, leave something blue or green for Jade Legacy, like if you want to lean into the Jade side, or like the cover's blue, because that was probably my favorite book of the month. Like, oh my goodness, so amazing. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.